Hello, I'm Sarah Lee, luxury travel blogger at livesharetravel.com, and welcome to the first of two live broadcasts where I'll be chatting all about Singapore with some of my favourite bloggers. I'm being joined here by Nellie Huang of Wild Junket, Abigail King of Inside Travel Lab, Megan Indo from Bobo and ChiChi, John Horak Druitt of Cooksister, and Dan Clark, who is of Dan Flying Solo. Now, you may have seen them all sharing blog posts, photos, and more on the One Day Singapore hashtag in the past few weeks. This event is all part of a project we are doing in conjunction with Singapore Tourism. And I'm going to be posing a number of questions to our blogger team who have all visited Singapore and have lots of insights and insider tips to share. But we also want to hear from you. Please do post your questions, your comments, and so on in the comment section here on the chat. And not only will we share them towards the end of the event, but you could win a £50 Amazon gift voucher just for your comments. And do share this with your friends. We'd love to see as many people as possible join the conversation. So let's get a flavour first of what the country has to offer in this brief video from Singapore Tourism.
We miss the city. We miss the sights and the sounds. We miss the gardens. And we miss the wild. We miss the big shopping malls, right down to the nooks and crannies. We miss our animals, and we miss our people. Most of all, we miss your smiles, and the smiles you bring to our faces. We know you miss exploring Singapore. We are doing what we have to do to keep everyone safe and healthy.
They've told us what they miss and how much they miss us. But I wonder, what do you guys miss most about Singapore? And Nellie, you're actually Singaporean, so let's start with you.
I just talked about how much I miss the food. I think Singaporean food is very unique because it's a beautiful blend of influences from China, Malaysia, and India. And there's so much variety, and it's very affordable to eat out in Singapore. That's what I miss a lot. And I also miss our tropical weather. Going back home always feels like a real holiday because it feels like an island escape, but at the same time, you've got so much urban stuff to do. Yeah.
What about you, Megan? What are you missing about Singapore?
Yeah, so I guess I definitely echoed already what Nellie and Abby said, especially with, I think Singapore is a really exciting destination as a traveler or visitor, and it's so unique, especially if you're already traveling around the Southeast Asia area. As far as food goes, it's some of the best food in the world because you have all those different influences of cultures with so many different amazing flavors. You can get a Michelin star meal at a hawker stall for like $2, which is really exciting. And then all the outdoor entertainment options like the evening shows at Marina Bay Sands and Gardens by the Bay. It's just really, really an exciting place to spend time in.
So I know that, like a lot of destinations, Singapore is often considered for its big ticket attractions like Gardens by the Bay. But I've heard a lot about its neighbourhoods as well. And I wondered, where would you recommend exploring in Singapore beyond the obvious? Abby first. Yeah, I think we've got some pictures of yours, Abby, to show as well on this.
Yeah. I wonder which is going to come up first because I had a lot of things I wanted to recommend for this section.
There we go.
Cycling. So I think my first impression, like Dan, I've been quite a few times to Singapore now, but the first impression was very much of this skyscraper city. But the three places to really point out were these three, which were that Henderson Waves was that big swirling bit of wood that you saw. It's a huge giant walkway that joins a proper hiking trail. And it's man-made, obviously, but it looks just really kind of futuristic and cool, and you're walking across the top of the city. And the other unexpected thing is here you can take a small boat and forgive my pronunciation, out to Czech Java and cycle around in this virtually untouched forest and jungle, and you can walk across boardwalks and go bird watching, and it's really natural, open excuse me, experience, and yet it doesn't even count as a day trip. I think from Singapore the boat trip is just that short enough. And then finally, probably one of the neighbourhoods closer to the big attractions would be Juchayat, with the very Instagrammable pictures of the houses, but they're also absolutely seeped with history of the foundation and development of Singapore as well. So as well as just being a pretty place to go and look, I think those three have got three really distinct characteristics and nothing to do with skyscrapers. So those would be my big three to recommend.
That's cool. Yeah, they're unusual things that you mentioned there. So yeah, there's not, like you say, it's not quite what I expected, because I would have expected, you know, all the skyscrapers and those kinds of things. Nellie, what about you? What neighbourhoods do you love? I believe we've got a little bit of a few photos from you as well, and also a bit of video as well with this, actually.
So I would recommend visiting Haji Lane, the Arab Street area. It's actually, yeah, in that photo that you see behind me. You've got beautiful mural painting, wall art, and then you've got the biggest mosque in Singapore there as well, and really trendy hipster cafes. I love hanging out there with my friends. And it's within walking distance from the city center, so it's very convenient to get there. And then the other neighborhood I would recommend visiting is East Coast Park, which is the biggest park in Singapore. We've got lots of green spaces in Singapore, even though a lot of people think that, you know, we are a concrete city, but there are actually lots of green spaces, and East Coast Park is one of them. It's the biggest park in Singapore, and it's a green park that runs along the coast, the eastern coast of Singapore. And besides, you know, renting a bicycle, you can also like go water skiing. You can go to the skate park, and that's also like this beautiful restaurant area around there. You probably heard of Jumbo Restaurant. It's one of the best places to have chili crabs in Singapore, and it's right there at East Coast Park.
And Dan, what about you? What are you enjoying? What neighbourhoods do you tend to hang out in?
Two of my favourite picks. One is the islands. So if you go behind Changi Airport to Changi Cove, you can take a little boat out to Pulau Ubin, where you can hire a bike, ride around the coastline, which is beautiful. There's huge lizards running around, and it's just super green, and you feel like you're a world away from downtown Singapore. And much closer to the centre of the city is Chinatown, which is beautiful. But just behind Chinatown is a street called Keong Saik Road, which is full of really cool, colourful buildings, very old buildings that have been transformed into really hip and modern bars and cafes. So if you go there sunset even, you'll find some amazing cocktails on rooftop terraces and really cool kind of fusion tapas food mixed with all of the different flavours of Singapore.
That really sounds like my kind of area, actually. Yeah, I think I'll be heading there when I get over there. Okay, Jeanne, what about you? What are your favourite neighbourhoods?
I am absolutely in love with Little India, because the first time I went to Singapore, and I said to people, I'm going to Singapore for a week, and they were like, oh, it's so clean, it's so clinical, it's so, you know, generic. And I got there, and the first time my friend took me to Little India, I walked down the street, and you're basically assaulted by smells and sounds, and it's a visual feast. And I think if you were to go to Little India, I would say go to Mustafa, which is this insane 2-city block, 24-hour store that sells everything from Brazilian bum implants to, I think, probably a car if you wanted to. They're amazing, beautiful temples, like really, really beautiful temples. But yes, so Little India, I would say definitely is my favorite secret neighborhood. And the Tekka Market is an amazing place to eat and a great place to shop as well.
Great. That's really cool. Sounds really, I think that's really interesting, the point that you make about people thinking Singapore might be so clean that it might almost be clinical, but it's really not. There's still a lot of culture and a lot of character to it. And so it's nice, yeah, really nice to hear about that as well. Yeah. Okay, and we touched a little bit on Singaporean culture. What is it that each of you have found most fascinating about that?
I kind of already touched on this earlier, but I find, especially in Southeast Asia, Singapore is one of the most unique places because all the different blends, like all the different cultures, and there's so many different influences. And we've already talked about how much we love the food there because of that, but I think it makes it one of the most unique cities in the world, not only because of the different enclaves and different neighborhoods in the city, but from everything, the food, the architecture, and then I also think it's really interesting that English is widely spoken there after we had been traveling throughout Asia at the time and living in Asia for over 2.5 years. It was really a surprise for us when we visited, and I mean, we knew they spoke English before going, but it was kind of like, wow, this is really convenient, and kind of a break for us to have to deal with language barriers for a little bit. But it really, I think it's the food is still my favorite.
Yeah, that's great. And then with Nellie, what about you then? I guess you might approach it from a slightly different perspective, for you. So what cultural things stand out?
Well, for me, because growing up in Singapore, I was always surrounded by friends from different ethnic groups. So that was very fun. I mean, like, we never identified as like being ethnic Chinese or ethnic Malay. We just identified as Singaporean. And it was awesome because we would eat together, we lived together. As you know, you probably might know, in every apartment building in Singapore, there's always a mixture of, families from Chinese, Malay, and Indian backgrounds. So we all live together, we eat together. So it's a very, I really like growing up in Singapore because of that. Another thing I like about our culture is that we are a very young country. So it makes us a bit different from surrounding countries in the sense that although we don't have a lot of history, we are working really hard to build that. And it's really cool seeing, every year when I go back home, there's something new. And I feel like we've come a long way from like the Singapore that I grew up in, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I really do like young places as well. They kind of bring a different have different atmosphere, don't they? They seem to really buzz with energy. Yeah, that's really good. Nice. And also those cultural mixes that you mentioned as well are really fascinating. And when you see, like the different ethnic blends and so on, makes it all the more interesting, doesn't it? What about you, Dan?
I mean, I don't have much more to add. It is that mix of having, Malaysian, Chinese, Arabic, Indian cultures. And I mean, it's not like in other cities where, they're distinct districts that you will spend a day in. They are very much, although they are very distinct in their own way, they're all very close together. So you can have, 5-6 different types of cuisine in a day whilst on kind of your own self-guided walking tour around Singapore. So for me, that's fascinating in that it's all kind of there. And obviously Singapore is super efficient and organized. So you can really, I always suggest Singapore as a great destination for people who might not have been to Asia or Southeast Asia before, because you can kind of sample all of these different cuisines and cultures in one place in a kind of 4-day trip, 5-day trip. And from there, you can get an insight into where you might want to travel on to next. And as you said, with the English language being the formal language there as well, it's a really good introduction, I find, to kind of the continent almost because of the Indian influence as well, just to sample those different cultures. They take the food and the drink and do so many creative things with it that you can have kind of the traditional culture, the traditional cuisine from that culture, as well as like what I think of is Singapore food, which is, like Nellie said, this invention of this new country's culture, which is amazing to see. And every time I go back, there's something new to try and see. And it's a city of creative ideas. It's constantly growing and evolving.
Yeah, that's really good. And also, I think, you know, Singapore is often viewed as a stopover destination, isn't it? Just somewhere where you might spend a day or something like that. But actually, when you've got so much new to see all the time, it's worth really sort of spending a bit longer there, isn't it? And soaking up more of the city, I guess, as well. Yeah, that's good. And John, what about you? What kind of things have fascinated you most about the culture there?
Well, one of the things I sent through was a blog post I did about the fascinating cultural diversity of Singapore. So it's quite a good sort of primer on the main cultures of the country. But what I find most fascinating, because I really liked coming from South Africa, we've got a real, I guess, potpourri of cultures. It's sort of, you know, lots of influences, lots of different cuisines, lots of different you know, people coming together to form what we call South African culture. And what I found fascinating in Singapore was the Peranakan culture, which I'd never heard of until I went to Singapore. And that's kind of the original people of Singapore before Singapore became a high-rise city-state. And if you look at the shop houses, I sent a picture of some of the shop houses that you always see in the pictures. And that's kind of really traditional Peranakan architecture, which is kind of really low-rise and really colorful. And it's kind of unlike, you know, anything I'd seen previously. And if anyone's flown Singapore Airlines, they've seen the uniforms that the air hostesses wear, which is kind of based on the Peranakan dress, which is a sarong and a kebaya. Kebaya being at the top and the sarong being a sort of very tight-fitting skirt. And the fabric is also very traditional Peranakan fabric, that kind of batik fabric. There's kind of Peranakan food, which I'll talk about the food. There we go. So the tight-fitting top and the skirt is a take. It's obviously a designer take on the traditional sort of Peranakan outfit, which is the kebaya and sarong. There was an exhibition recently, I think it's still online if you Google it, a whole exhibition devoted to the development of the kebaya and how the outfit and how it came to be and how it developed from other cultures into this quite unique Singaporean institution. And there's a whole museum dedicated to Peranakan history also in Singapore, which I would highly recommend anyone that visits to go and have a look at. And eat Peranakan food. There's a wonderful restaurant called Candlenut Kitchen, which serves Peranakan food, which is fantastic.
Oh, John, I need to know more about the food. In fact, we are going to dedicate the next few minutes to talking all about Singaporean food, as if we haven't done enough of that already. But yeah, I mean, what are your favourite restaurants or dishes that you would recommend there?
How long is a piece of string? How long do we have?
I reckon you've got a whole blog. You've got a blog post on it, haven't you?
I've got 2 blog posts on it. There's one which is kind of the 9 must-eat dishes to have in Singapore, which covers classics like chili crab. Everyone's heard of chili crab, but I'd also say people should try black pepper crab, which is kind of not as saucy and messy, but I think it's kind of full of more subtle flavors, which is also a very Singaporean thing. And there's laksa, which is possibly my favorite thing in the entire world, which is a kind of a spicy noodle soup that has various bits and pieces, tofu, bean sprouts, all kinds of other stuff in it, which is so comforting and so warming. You can find it at any hawker market. You can find it at upmarket restaurants. It's all over. The picture on the screen now is called kwepati, which is they're kind of little crispy cones into which you put a selection of vegetables. But it's the cooking of the vegetables that takes days. To prepare them from scratch takes 3 days, apparently, to do it properly traditionally. You don't get these that often anymore because they're hard to make, but you can still find some places that serve really beautiful ones. And also there's something called popia, which is like a spring roll. It's like an unfried spring roll, which is really fresh and full of lovely fresh flavors. And yeah, so those are some of the things that I think people should try in Singapore because they're so unique. And in terms of restaurants, I mentioned Candlenut Kitchen, which is quite upmarket, but it serves a really interesting sort of take on Peranakan food and local ingredients. They do an amazing dessert, which is buah keluak ice cream with a chocolate foam, which is just to die for. But of course, there's also non-traditional restaurants. One that I really loved was a place called Cure, which is a British chef who does very well priced tasting menu, and it's really marvelous. And you sit really up close and personal. There's an open kitchen. It's very unfussed. There's no starched white tablecloths. It's really it's really relaxed. And the last thing I have to mention about the food, I went to a supper club in Singapore called Ovenbird Home Cooking Adventures, and it was one of the most amazing experiences I've had on travels ever, because we got to go into just a normal Singapore, housing block, like an apartment block, and inside was just completely not what I expected. And the guy does the most amazing food. He's not a chef by profession. He does this, for fun a couple of times a month, and it is outstanding. Ovenbird Home Cooking Adventures. Definitely have a look at that.
Okay, that sounds really good.
And yeah, and as I said, I have 2 blog posts about things to eat in Singapore and top foodie experiences. So there's a lot of reading in there.
Great. Yeah, so check out Cooksister for a good rundown of the food. I think, Nellie, have you got a food article as well? Or either way?
I've also got a very long list of must-try dishes in Singapore. And my number 1 is chili crabs, of course. If we had a national dish, it would be chili crabs, because it's simple, but it's something that we have on special occasions, like for Chinese New Year, and it's something that we eat as a family. So for me, it always brings back nice memories, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And the best place to eat chili crabs is No Signboard Seafood Restaurant. It sounds funny, but it's a very famous chain in Singapore. They've got the headquarters is in Geylang Road. Geylang Road is the red light district of Singapore, but they've got very interesting hawker centers and food places there. And that's where you go for the authentic Singapore dish.
And the restaurant was called, what was it again?
It's called No Signboard Seafood Restaurant.
No signboards. Excellent. Okay. I'm noting all of this down. Great tips. Yeah. And what about you, Abby?
Well, I was going to lower the tone completely because I expected that you two would talk about the lovely food, and I was just really going to talk about the food that surprised me the most, since the theme was a surprise, and that would be the ice cream sandwich. I hadn't really realised that was the thing. Nellie's laughing, you can see as well. Yeah, so it was a sort of white bread with a slab of pink and vanilla ice cream.
I think we have a picture of that.
Kind of like a little kid's dream, except for it's served as a grown-up snack. And so that I thought I should just throw into the mix, along with, obviously, there we go. That's all, and the pink bread. Yeah, that was the bit that surprised me the most, I think.
Was that bread or cake? It looks like it. Well, maybe it's just food colours there, but it looked like it would be quite sweet bread.
It's very processed, which I guess the pink kind of gives all the game away. But it wasn't particularly sweet. No, it was just like you'd imagine a sandwich with some ice cream in the middle. It wasn't really any more to it than that. But this was served up in the midst of a really interesting, fascinating food tour, and I'd really highly recommend one. There's some excellent food bloggers in Singapore as well, and so they took us to see all these very different, very traditional dishes, very intricate, and all these things. And then alongside that was the ice cream sandwich, and so I just thought for balance I should bring it into this chat.
Yeah. Oh, good. No, I like that. I like that we've had everything from Michelin stars that Megan mentioned similar sort of stuff before, down to the over-processed ice cream sandwich. But sometimes you just want that, don't you? So
well, it's hot and sticky. It was actually quite nice and refreshing. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't have thought I wanted it, Sarah, but it turns out I did. So
no, I love that. Megan, what about you? What are your best hawker stall finds? Street food and things like that.
So it's so hard because we're splitting meals so that we can order more meals at basically all hours of the day at different hawker stalls. But 2 of the different food courts and hawker stall areas that we like the most were the Maxwell Center and the Chinatown Complex. Those were ones that we just couldn't stop coming back to. But yeah, it's too hard for me to even pick what our favorite thing was because we ate way too much. We ate so much. We ate everything.
It sounds fantastic. It's just like it's the place for food. If you want to eat, go there. I see we've got a lot of comments as well on the food, so we'll be coming to some comments and questions in a little while. But it sounds like the food is a big hit. Dan, do you have anything further to add on that?
Just how affordable the food is. I mean, amazing food for a couple of dollars is possible. So that's the one thing I would add, is when people think of Singapore, they sometimes get put off thinking of like the really expensive restaurants on top of the amazing hotels. There's so much amazing food at such great prices as well.
Oh, well, that's really good to know as well. Yeah, that you can do it all on a budget as well. It doesn't have to be fancy all the time, even though I quite like the idea of a bit fancy. But yeah, okay. So before we get on to submitted questions, I'm just wondering, what would you guys recommend for first-time visitors to Singapore? I think, Abby, you've got a blog post on this, have you? I think we had something on that. What would be your tips?
Yeah, so I think I'd probably recommend two different approaches, whether or not it's your first time in Asia or not. Because I think if you've travelled through quite a lot of other parts in Asia, then I'd really recommend seeing the classic sites in Singapore first. And so I've written one itinerary that kind of goes through that. So those are the Gardens by the Bay, the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Raffles Hotel. And if you haven't ever been to Asia before, then perhaps some of these very well organised with lots of tourists places are not the best place for you. Perhaps then it's more, if you're short on time, make sure that you do go to the neighbourhoods of Chinatown, Little India, and then further away out to the islands, and spend a lot more time not being organised, basically, with kind of loose, either self-guided tours or just wandering around, based loosely on the itinerary that I've written there. Because I think if you've got a lot of time, you can obviously do both. But if you're short on time and people are often their first time in Singapore, is often a stopover on a longer journey. And then I've noticed that people then tend to go back for a longer time once they realise, hey, actually, there's so much to do here. So that's how I would really split the general approach for first-time visitors. Are you about to springboard into the rest of Asia, or is this it, the first time that you've been in this really diverse continent?
Yeah. Excellent. That's really good advice. Lots of things to consider in terms of how you want to kind of make your trip there, really, isn't it? Yeah, which direction do you want to go in? What about you, Megan? What would you recommend to first-timers?
So I definitely agree with everything Abby said. I think it's important to go see the sites if it's your first time. You have to see Gardens by the Bay. You have to see. They're amazing. There's nothing like it in the world.
Do you know, and we've got a picture of you there as well, because we've actually, we haven't even mentioned Gardens by the Bay yet, which is obviously one of the most famous sites in Singapore, isn't it? So sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. It's amazing. We ended up going back because we wanted to also come back for the light show, but we went during the day too. But I definitely recommend, you have to see some of the, the top attractions, as well as make time for you just to explore, like have some time where you don't have anything planned other than visiting a neighborhood that you're curious about, or taking recommendations from people that have traveled there, and just kind of getting that surprise element that was discussed about earlier, just about the different neighborhoods and everything there is to see in Singapore, and there's so much.
Yeah, great. And Dan, what about you?
My biggest tip is just not to stop over. Don't just go for a day or two. I mean, do a stopover, because flying Singapore Airlines is one of the best things you'll ever do in your life. Even in economy, they give out free. In economy, you can get Singapore Sling cocktails, which I think is amazing, and an amazing airline. So do a stopover, but make sure it's more than 24, 48 hours. 3 days minimum, I'd say. Even 5 days, you can fool with getting away from the main kind of sites where most people spend their stopover, and go and explore all the neighborhoods we went to. So give yourself enough time is the tip I always give people with Singapore.
That's really good advice as well. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I actually flew Singapore Airlines for the first time in February. And yes, I had a Singapore sling. I heard all about that and made sure that that was one of the first things I did when they came round. And it was really good. Yeah, but it is worth taking some time. I think it's always the thing with cities though, isn't it? We always like want to race around and see everything. But it's actually
that's the thing people forget. Singapore is a whole country. They think of it as just this amazing city, but there's this whole country. So you've got all of the things we've mentioned as well. So yeah, plan as if you're going to a small country, not as if you're going to a city. That would be a good way to summarize it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Nellie, what about you?
For me, my biggest tip would be for people to go local, to go to the local hawker centers, try local food, even if they don't recognize anything they see on the menu, but just and stay in local neighborhood. A lot of people tend to stay in hotels in the Marina Bay area, which is very nice. I understand that. But there are neighborhoods around that area that would give a more authentic Singapore experience. Like Bugis, for example, is within walking distance from City Hall, but it still has fantastic hotels, brilliant temples, Buddhist temples, and then you've got also hawker centers as well. So yeah, Tiong Bahru is another great place as well. Tiong Bahru is very near. It's actually just one MRT stop away from the City Hall, and they've got really, really good cafes and hawker centers. I know I talk too much about food, but yeah, that's me.
Don't worry, I think everybody is talking about food in the comments as well. There's lots of stuff about food. So yeah, it seems to be a really popular subject. John, have you got any other tips to add for first timers?
Well, I would totally second everything everyone has said, especially the Flying Singapore Airlines, because they are by far my favorite airline ever in the history of the world. And other than that, you know, everything that every one of you said, I completely agree with. But I would also say, especially for first-time visitors who kind of want to try the food and want to go local, but are a little bit nervous about, you know, what am I eating and what is this weird stuff? And it can be quite intimidating, because I know the first time we went, we literally fell off the airplane, fell into a shower, and then went straight to a tiny local hawker center. And I just had no idea what was even on the menu. My friend just ordered for me. But there are some excellent foodie walking tours, and I would really recommend, if you're a foodie and you're a first-time visitor to Singapore, try and take one of those walking tours, because you get to kind of know the neighborhoods, and the tour guides are really knowledgeable, and you get to eat stuff that you would probably not order by yourself. But once you've had the confidence of going on a tour with somebody who knows what they're talking about, you're far more likely to be more adventurous and try different stuff on your own. So I would definitely recommend that for first-time visitors.
We're going to go to some of the questions now that people are submitting on the live chat. So let's pull them up. 1 second. Okay, let's pose this one to Nellie, because obviously Nellie's from Singapore, which you probably know really well. Kavita has asked, a lot of people have recommended like Little India and specific areas for foodies. But do you have any suggestions that are really not that well known, a really small pocket to go to for some kind of real colory flavors of Singapore?
I think like the neighborhood I mentioned earlier, Tiong Bahru, it would be for me personally, is the best place in Singapore for food, because Tiong Bahru Hawker Center is famous throughout the island for having the best char siu rice, the best tree kueh, and the best wonton mee. So as Singaporeans, we tend to travel even from one end of the island to another. It doesn't take long, it takes 1 hour, but still we travel around the island for the best food, and Tiong Bahru would have the best food in Singapore.
So someone's asking, where's the best rooftop bar for cocktails? Obviously, Marina Bay Sands is an amazing place to have one. But Megan, do you have any other really cool kind of rooftop bars or drinking spots in the city?
You know what? We didn't end up doing any rooftop bars, but we did go to a really cool speakeasy on next to that really famous building. We were staying at a hotel It's called Hotel 1929, and their concierge actually recommended it to us and gave us the password, and it was quite literally across the street. But other than that, we actually, even though we were big nightlife people, we didn't partake in much of Singapore's nightlife because we were eating too much and passing out early after the shows.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. Did you know you can actually go inside the Super Tree Towers in the Gardens by the Bay? You can actually go to the top of one of them, and there's a little rooftop bar up there too.
I didn't know about the rooftop bar. No.
Yeah, it's really cool. Abby, Jeanne, Nellie, any rooftop bar suggestions?
Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing. I've been to so many good rooftop bars, but they're all on the same night, and I don't have all the details. Still in mind. I would echo that actually the drinks around Gardens by the Bay is actually a very nice place to go. I was really skeptical. I thought it might be a bit too, it is very synthetic. Obviously, that's the whole point. But the light show is amazing. And actually to see it and have a rooftop drink there is great. The other sort of classic thing to do in Singapore is the Singapore Sling at the Raffles Hotel. You'll find that that's really quite a big queue and enormously touristy. So, and a good alternative, it's not a rooftop, but the open courtyard at the Raffles Hotel is actually a really beautiful atmospheric spot. And you can still you've still got the link to the history there. That's where the cocktail was invented, but it's actually a really nice place to sit and have a drink.
Well, I love rooftop bars, and there are many in Singapore. Like One Raffles Place is a very popular one, and it's got amazing views, expensive drinks, but the best views in town. But I think my favorite is probably Level 33. It's a craft beer brewery. Yeah, so you can actually order like a whole beer tap and try different kind of beer that they brew themselves. And then you've got this amazing view of the Marina Bay Sands and Singapore River and Fullerton Hotel on the left. So yeah, definitely recommend that place.
Level 33 is definitely worth going to. And in some ways, it's better than being at the Marina Bay Sands because you can look at the Marina Bay Sands from the other side. So I love Level 33. It's great.
Katie has asked, she said, if I was to visit Singapore, what's the #1 dish you would recommend that I should try? And what dish would you advise me to steer clear of? Over to, I think, Nellie or Jeanne should seem to be, yeah, come on, you go for it. Our food gurus.
The one is, I would say try black pepper crab. Everyone hears about chili crab, but you should also try black pepper crab, which is quite a different dish and I really love. And the other thing is, much as I love the traditional Singaporean laksa, which is kind of a creamy coconut laksa, there's also something called asam laksa, which is a very different dish again, which is kind of more a tamarind sweet and sour broth, and it's got mackerel in, which sounds, I know, I first thought that's really peculiar, but that's definitely something I would recommend trying when I was there. But yeah, the black pepper crab is more a Singaporean dish, but definitely worth trying. But I defer to Nellie though.
So a very typical Singaporean dish is char kway teow, which is fried rice noodles. You fry it in a very sweet black sauce, and it's got a lot of flavor, a lot of wok hei, if you understand what I mean. And you can find it in every food court, every hawker center, and it's as Singaporean as it gets. And then another dish that I love is carrot cake. It's nothing like the British carrot cake that we all know. It's actually savory, it's fried, and it's actually made of white radish instead of carrots. And they grate it, they steam it, and then they fry it with eggs and a black sauce, and it's amazing.
That sounds really good. Yeah.
I have another one as well that I've only had in Singapore and I adore, which is oyster omelet, which sounds really weird if you like oysters raw, which I normally do. And I thought this was going to be a disaster, and it's really, when it's well made, it's fantastic. It's kind of like the love child of scrambled eggs and omelet with barely cooked oysters sort of stirred through it, and it's fabulous. You can get it at the hawker centers. There are better and worse examples, but if you get a good one, it is just fantastic. So oyster omelet is something I'd recommend.
Okay, gosh, you're all really making me hungry. I need to go and eat immediately after this. No one has come up with anything that they don't like yet either, so that's quite good. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on from food for a bit. Dan, I've got a question for you. You mentioned the bike ride that runs, that you did behind the airport. What was the name of that place again? Someone's Ryan's asking here, and how long is the bike ride?
So it's actually on an island. So you take these little boats from Changi Cove, which are called bum boats. They're like these little old traditional wooden boats. And then the island's called Pulau Ubin. But there's a couple of other islands as well, like Abby mentioned, you can go to. And then when you get there, you can just hire the bikes there, and it probably would take a couple of hours at a leisurely pace to go around the island and dipping inside. But you can do as much or as little as you like. You can spend the whole day cycling around, stopping off at little beaches, or getting off to do the board walks by foot, or you can just do it in a couple of days and then come back over. It's something I always recommend to people if they have already checked their bags in at the airport in the morning and have like 5-6 hours before their flight. You can just take a taxi over to take the boat and do that.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really nice. Sounds like a nice way to sort of chill out as well.
Absolutely. You don't feel like you are in Singapore anymore. You feel like you're on this tiny little world away from everything, almost like Jurassic Park. There's these lizards that are like this big walking around, and so much greenery. It's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds really great. Oh, nice. Well, we have really covered quite a lot here today. There's been lots of surprises. Seems to be a key word, as well as obviously there's tradition and modernity that you'd expect in Singapore, but it's good to hear about lots of different things and lots of surprises along the way. So we're kind of running right out on time now. Actually, we've been on for an hour already, and just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining me and sharing such fantastic tips. And also like jumping in and handling all of the technical problems that we've had along the way. It's been great. It's been really fun and fascinating chatting to you all and getting your take on Singapore as well. There is a whole lot more that you'll find in blog posts on all of these great bloggers' sites. And if you follow along on the One Day Singapore hashtag, you'll see lots and lots of content from these guys, as well as some other bloggers in the next month or so. And like I said, this is the first of 2 broadcasts on Singapore. The next one is going to be on August the 8th, which is another Wednesday as well, at 5 p.m. So do come and join us for that. We've got another great blogger team there, and I think we've got a little some information on who's coming up on that, which hopefully we'll get on screen. There we go. We've got Eugene Chu of Small Crazy, Jane Gorman of Gold Tweets World, Lisa Rivera of Following the Rivera, Matt Preston will be coming in from He's Will Travel with a Mate, and then Becky Enright of Borders of Adventure. We'll all be getting together to talk more about Singapore and answer any other questions that you have. So I'm looking forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, I hope you can all keep those travel dreams alive.